A wonderful good morning to everyone, wherever you are, either working from home or a hotel, and welcome to the second webinar of our GTCC Clean Air Initiative series, Green Solutions from Germany. My name is Andreas Richter. I'm the chair of the Clean Air Working Group of the German-Thai Chamber of Commerce. We initiated the GTCC Clean Air Initiative last year, and since then have been very actively promoting this topic among Thai policymakers, members of the general public, and our members, of course. We've been meeting with the industry minister, Surya, who is a big supporter of our Clean Air Initiative. And we also approached the energy minister, who we unfortunately could not meet in person due to COVID. But as you have seen in the public and media recently, the energy ministry is also following a clean air policy, and they have instructed EGAT to set up clean air sensors in every province in Thailand to monitor the air quality. And I'm not saying that our initiative is bearing fruits already, but it's great to see that there's progress, in this area, which makes us happy, of course. Because as a Chamber of Commerce, we are concerned that the attractiveness of Thailand will gradually decline due to the country's high level of polluted air. Thailand ranks 28th out of the most polluted countries, and the annual PM 2.5 average is more than 2 times higher than what the World Health Organization actually recommends as a maximum. A report released by Greenpeace last year also attributes more than 14,000 deaths in Thailand only to air pollution. And clearly, this is causing a significant burden on the Thai economy and its society. Healthcare cost and health is worsening, and this is definitely, a very, very bad situation for the country. We as GTCC believe that to get out of this problem, environmental policy reforms are required, and that will not only make the Thai people and their foreign guests happier, but it will also provide a solution to achieve sustainable economic growth and development in Thailand in the years to come. And obviously, in times of COVID and flattening economy, this would help the country to position itself as a leading foreign direct investment destination and also a tourist destination, which is so much needed for the economy in Thailand to recover. What we have planned until January next year is that GTCC will conduct a monthly clean air initiative webinar related to covering a wide range of sectors, including automotive, energy, agriculture, and building construction, to name just a few. In these webinars, representatives from German companies will share with us their approach towards sustainability and clean air and the standards they recommend to follow, including the technical solutions they provide to improve our quality of life. Today, and that makes me very proud, we have a representative of one of Germany's most innovative companies with us today, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Tobias Kadziela, Director, Sales and Operations, Asia Pacific of Siemens Energy Pte Limited. Mr. Kadziela will discuss with us the Siemens Decarbonized Energy Systems and their approach on how to achieve carbon neutrality and how it benefits society. So thank you very much to Mr. Kadziela for your time and for making yourself available. We are looking forward to an informative webinar, so please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Kopkun Kap for having me here today, and for everyone joining this session. My target for today is to give you an overview of what Siemens Energy is doing in the area of decarbonized energy systems, which goes well hand in hand with the objective to reach clean air or cleaner air. We are a big company, also a complex company. I will give you a brief overview. I might not answer all your questions today that you have. Feel free to ask them during this webinar and also in the Q&A. We can also follow up the questions. That's no problem. I think you have my name and my contact details, so that's not going to be an issue. And I will also share the presentation. So don't bother with screenshots or anything. These slides can be shared. That's no issue. So you can comfortably listening and hopefully I can answer some of your questions. So today, as I said, we are a big company. I give you a very brief overview of Siemens Energy, who we are, what we are doing. I think the audience is pretty diverse. Not everyone is from the energy industry. So I think that's helpful. Also, many have heard the name Siemens or Siemens Energy. I will talk about the decarbonization trends. Why are we active in this area? And decarbonization is also, let's put it this way, a buzzword. You have it all over the place, but to make it more tangible, what we are doing and how we approach this with our so-called decarbonized energy systems approach, including some examples. So you will also get some examples. So I want to make it as tangible as possible, although it's a complex topic. So, I mean, Siemens Energy is an offspring of Siemens. We were stock listed last year in September in the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And I guess around April last year, we were carved out. So we are our own company and own entity. But I mean, we carry this DNA and history of 150 years being Siemens before. So who are we? We are present in 90 countries. We have also a big business and representation in Thailand with service centers for our gas turbine business, for example. Thailand is one of the most important markets for us here in Southeast Asia. We are proud to say that 1/6 of the global electricity generation is based on our technology. That's nice to hear, but it's also a big responsibility to be there for our customers at all times. And today we can say 50% of our portfolio is already decarbonized revenues. And how do we get to these decarbonized revenues, or how are we set up? This slide, again, I said we are a bit complex. Yeah, a big conglomerate before Siemens, now Siemens Energy. Now it gets a bit easier, but let me just explain to you. You see on the bottom, we are reporting, or this is our management, also to the capital markets. We report to segments, gas and power, and the Siemens Gamesa renewable energy business, the wind business. So in the gas and power, that's our traditional business. We are active in power generation, be it central and decentral power generation, mostly with gas turbines, steam turbines, but also gas engines. We are active in industrial applications where we deliver compressors, or also compressor trains to customers in the oil and gas industry, but also other industries, could be pulp and paper, food and beverage, and wherever. Transmission is very important nowadays because the energy systems gets more and more complex with more and more renewables. So in the transmission business, we are active with in the HVDC business with transformers, switch gears, all of these things. And then we have a segment called new energy business, and it's where we have our hydrogen business. I can elaborate a bit on this later, but in a nutshell, we are active with our electrolyzers called C-lasers in the hydrogen business, and I mean that's really at the front line of the decarbonization activities. And then we are owning, when I say we, Siemens Energy owns a 67% stake in Siemens Gamesa, which is the wind business. They are number one in offshore globally, and then also very active in onshore business. So, and that's why you can see we have already a big share of decarbonization revenue streams if you look at wind, transmission, and the new energy business. So we are proud to say we cut across the whole energy value chain from oil and gas through renewables all the way through transmission. And again, we carry 150 years of legacy. So how are we looking at our customers when you see all these different businesses? This is an interesting slide that we also see a very diverse customer base. It's a bit of a reflection from the earlier slide. We have strong base in the utilities, municipalities, IPPs, but also EPC customers, long-time relationship with all these companies in the energy business, and as I mentioned, industries. Of course, the numbers, whether number one, number two, can change from quarter to quarter or depending on the time frame you look. But in general, for the distributed generation, we are very strong positioned with our SGT 800, well known in Thailand. There we are globally number one. And also in the central generation, we are one of the leading companies. So this is a bit of Siemens Energy, yeah, so that you have an idea where we come from and what's the portfolio, and now decarbonization. I mean, there are a few mega trends in this world, the 4 Ds that you can see here on the slide. Today, I want to focus on the first D, decarbonization. And yeah, why is everyone talking about it? Yeah, and we heard it in the introduction. And when you hear clean air, yeah, I immediately think of cities, think of industry, I think of traffic, and then, oh, clean air, yeah, or not so clean air. So what are the mega trends that we face today? That's, of course, globalization, not going into details here. Whether COVID changes this a little bit, we can argue, but I think in the end, globalization is there and will stay. The world is very connected. But urbanization is very important. More and more people live in cities. There's a demographic change in terms of population growth globally, but also in terms of aging. People get more and more older. So this also has to be taken care of. Climate change is a big topic. The recent years, I mean, all over the place. And I think the recent events globally, all these floods and forest and wildfires, show that there is a need for action. And digitalization is another topic that can hopefully help to transform the energy landscape to a more sustainable one, but also causes some probably anxiety or fears for people, you know, what does it mean for my life and my job? So these are the mega trends on one side, and on the other side, we have a conflict to solve in the energy business. This is so-called the energy trilemma. Everyone wants to have as cheap as possible energy and electricity. I think we can all agree on that. It's one target we want to achieve, or our customers need to achieve. We look at reliable electricity supply. I mean, first of all, ideally people get access to electricity. That's not always the case, and especially developing countries. And of course, once you have access, you want to have reliable access. You want access when you need it, especially, again, demographic change. People get older. Maybe you see more people in hospitals. Hospitals need electricity. Yeah? There's no modern civilization without electricity. That's why reliable is also important. But we don't live just here for the short term. I mean, humans are supposed to stay longer. We have children, grandchildren, and sustainability is very important. So we are not here to solve the energy issue of today and tomorrow, but also on the long term. So we talk about sustainability. And this is one of the big issues. How do you get these three challenges together? Yeah, get electricity is affordable, that is reliable, but also sustainable in the long run. That's why we are here. That's why we get up in the morning, and that's why we develop technology for our customers to achieve these targets. So now this sounds all valid, this energy trilemma, but we also have to see that across the world, each country has a different starting point for their energy transformation. Yeah, and a different starting point means also a different path, a different speed to a sustainable energy system. And hence, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Each country needs a different solution, or probably each customer, each industrial business. They all have their challenges. And that's why there's no blueprint for everyone. I think what we can agree is renewables are a no regret move. Yeah? It's clean and green, but also comes with challenges for the grid. I can elaborate a bit later on it. But this map shows you, I'm not going into the details, that some countries have policies in place for example, net zero pledges, or even reach net zero emissions already in the power sector. I think there are only a very few countries. I think one of them is Bhutan or Nepal. I mean, very small countries and running on hydro. But in general, most countries are not net zero as of today. Some countries pledged net zero targets, but it's a long way to go. And that's a huge challenge. And that's a challenge for all of us, where we all have to contribute. And how does technology come into here? I mean, we are a technology provider. We develop technology. as you've seen in the earlier slides. We've been in the turbine business, steam turbine, gas turbine. We've been in wind for a long time. We tap into the storage market. And here you can see on this slide that in the recent years, technology have been advancing. That comes also with price declines or cost declines, yeah. And then in the end, these technologies become more competitive. So we can tackle the issue of affordability, yeah. So they become cheaper, and of course, clean and green means sustainable. So we can tick 2 of the boxes. So now the question is, how is it reliable, a system with more and more renewables? And then, of course, you come or end up with the topic of dealing with storage technologies, be it thermal storage, battery storage, or even hydrogen. Hydrogen is also storage. Again, for each country, there's a different solution, and or for each business. But here I would like to show you that there has been significant price drops, and for the battery storage, I think we are maybe at a stage we have been 10 years ago for PV. So for battery, you will see more and more price drops. Yeah? And of course, this helps. This helps to implement more and more renewables. Now, this all sounds complicated, and we are probably wondering, how do we get there? How do we solve this topic of climate change, changing technologies? How does it impact my business? What does it mean for my future? There's one slide I want to show you where I would like to, take the fear out of it a little bit. I would like to say it is yet another energy transition. So since the industrialization, which started 1800 something, there's always been big changes. So 200 years ago, we went from basically biomass, wood, to coal during the industrialization. Then the next transformation was from coal to oil, especially in the 70s, the 1970s. Then there was nuclear coming up, followed by gas, and nowadays it's renewables. So throughout all the times, all the years, there's always been change. So no one should be worried about, oh, the world is changing. No, it has always been changing. So that's part of life. And as I mentioned earlier, we have been around for a long time. So Siemens was established in 1847 and has been in the power business almost since ever. So we have been around here the whole time, if you want, for our customers. So now, after outlining the conditions, why do we talk about decarbonization? I would like to inform you how we approach it as Siemens Energy. Yeah? I mean, now we have a big problem. So how do we approach the problem? So we call it Decarbonized Energy Systems. And that's there are dedicated people in the company to deal with it. So we have our traditional business, which we serve as usual. And then we have also people in this Decarbonized Energy Systems initiative to support the energy transformation, although there's no clear cut between traditional business or new business. I mean, in the end, it's the same people who work on it. So what you see here is, it's a busy slide. Don't try to read all the icons. Each icon represents a technology or product or solution. And we have 3 categories here. First one is efficiency increase. Second one is fuel shift and hybrids. And the third category is deep decarbonization. So why do I show you the slides? The answer is there is no one big step to decarbonization. It won't happen overnight. And it happens in many little steps. And that's why on the left-hand side, efficiency increase is the lowest hanging fruit. That's really our traditional business. So if you look at Thailand, where we use our SGT 800s in power generation, but also in combined heat and power applications, that means we put gas into our turbines, we generate electricity, and we use the exhaust heat also to supply industrial customers. And then you reach a very high fuel utilization of up to 90 or more percent. So 90% of the energy that's in the fuel can be converted. And whether that's fossil, yes, it's still fossil, but in the end, the world is not running yet on renewables, and 90% fuel efficiency means you have very low specific emissions. So that's what we do on efficiency increase. There are also other ideas like sea float. So we also provide floating power plants for islands. I have an example later. It's also a very interesting solution. In the second category of fuel shift and hybridization, what does it mean? It means, yeah, we go from coal. We help customers to shift from coal to gas or from oil to gas, so to have cleaner fuels in their portfolio. We also combine technologies. You saw battery on the slide before, which has reduced cost. So we can combine gas turbine with batteries. We can combine wind and gas turbine with batteries and build hybrid power plants. So basically put together all these Lego bricks in a meaningful solution. We also are active in the heat pump industry, where we use renewable electricity to generate heat, be it district heating or for industrial processes. Yeah, so district heating maybe not important for Southeast Asia, but industrial processes like food and beverage, very important. So there are many ideas how we can find a solution that's in the middle. Also, we can put hydrogen in our gas turbines for co-firing it with natural gas, and in the end, you drop your emissions. So that's the solution in the middle. Here, I would say it's most technologies are proven. It's doable, commercial viable, depending on where you try to do it. Probably depends also on the government regulations and the support. But in the end, here there is, I would say, nothing too fancy about it. Yeah, it's combining new technology with very proven technology, and in the end, you get the best out of it, out of both worlds. And on the right-hand side, the deep decarbonization, I mean, that's where we want to go, where everyone wants to go, I believe. No one has a problem with green and clean energy, but it has to be affordable, right? And here the problem is mainly the commercial viability. So what do we have here? If you look at hydrogen, or which also falls under the topic of power to X. So you take electricity, you produce hydrogen molecules, and then you can do whatever you want with the hydrogen. You can create green ammonia and put it into the fertilizer industry. You can use it in the transport sector directly for fuel cell cars or fuel cell buses. So there are many uses. So, but here the point is these new use cases for hydrogen are often not yet commercial viable. So there's a big challenge, and also technology needs to evolve to drop costs further down. But on the positive end, you see icons like wind power, solar power. I mean, these are commercial viable, yeah, and they are obviously CO2 free. So you can call them as technologies for deep decarbonization. So this is just in a nutshell how we go step by step from one category to the other. All three exist today. Yeah? We can serve you and other customers in all of these categories, depending on your needs. But now, after you've seen this, you maybe say, sounds very complicated. Now I have all these technologies, all these options. How do I solve my energy problem? And there we have an approach that we say you have all these Lego bricks. You see on the left-hand side, you have all these options. You might be a bit confused. But in the end, what we like to do with our customers to build a solution, to build a house. And then that's our approach that we call Decarbonization Journey. It's a co-creation approach that you get the solution that suits you, might not suit another company or another country or another business, but suits you. And this is the idea that we get out of this complexity from all these options to create that one solution, or one of the solutions. There might be multiple choices that work for you. And what is the result out of this? Again, these three categories you have seen earlier. On the efficiency increase, I would like to mention one example. It's in the Caribbean, but could be applicable in any other island nation, if you want, or even in densely populated city where you don't have much land, but where you have water, like a seashore or river. We supply the floating power plant to the Dominican Republic, and it's a combined cycle. So it's a highly efficient thermal plant. It's floating, so the customer doesn't need land. It's prefabricated in Sweden and Singapore in a shipyard, and it's plug and play for the customer. It's just being shipped over, plugged in, and then it can run. So there's minimum installation on site. and it has a battery on board. So it's basically a floating battery hybrid power plant, if you want. And why did the customer do that? I mean, they had oil and now they have natural gas. With this new technology, or they had gas before. Sorry, in this case, they had gas before, but they had not very efficient technology. And now they have a high efficient technology, and that's how they reduce their emission. And also very important for their tourism. I mean, if you have tourists, you also need to make sure that it's sustainable business you're doing there. Second category, fuel switch and hybridization. What we've done here is in Germany, a customer, but could be any customer around the world. Customer was running on coal, switching coal off, but still needs power, of course. So we supply a gas turbine, so you can run that on natural gas. It also comes with a battery, so the customer can, whenever there is an issue in the grid or if there was a blackout, can start this system in an island mode. And it's ready for 100% hydrogen. So this customer made a deliberate choice to say, I want a technology that I still can run in 10, 15 years. Because government is pushing for hydrogen and for less emissions, also in the thermal power plants, and the customer needs to make sure the investment of today is still running in 10 years down the road. So we make sure you can run in 10 years or whenever it happens on hydrogen. Last example on deep decarbonization, it's also very interesting. It's called High Flex Power. It's a project where we prove a full round trip power to power, from wind power to hydrogen. Then we can store the hydrogen, and then we re-electrify the hydrogen in a gas turbine in a combined heat and power application. So it's a pulp and paper factory, if I'm not wrong, for highest fuel efficiency. Now we can argue, do I want wind power, turn it into hydrogen, and then re-electrify hydrogen to electrons and heat? But here the main point is it's excess renewables, so renewables that would have been curtailed because there's too much excess renewable in the grid at certain times. It's a CHP application, so we have very high fuel utilization, as I mentioned earlier, and it's also a project to prove the viability, the technical viability of a round trip from renewable electrons back to electrons after it was stored in hydrogen. So it's a very interesting project with lots of partners you can see there. And yeah, it's very exciting. So we are on the forefront of these things. And now the question is, if a customer approaches us or we approach customers, how do we get to these solutions? As you have seen, these three examples, the question is, how do we get there? And I mentioned it earlier, we call it discovery sessions and co-creation. So basically, first we sit together. We start with a blank canvas, if you want. Yeah, we have to look at the customer issue. What's their objective? Is the objective to become more fuel efficient, to become cleaner, greener? Is it CO2 emissions? Is it a certain budget they have? There are many constraints. Yeah. Then we can sit down and work on a collaboration plan. So usually we have teams from the customer and from Siemens Energy then sitting together and then design jointly the system of the future. That could be a supply for a factory, that could be for a utility, central power generation supply with a big grid connection. It could be whatever the problem is. I mean, we are agnostic to the problem. We're here to solve it. So we design the energy system and then we implement the solution. So to make it a bit more tangible, what does go into the equation? I mean, you do not just sit down and say, okay, that's my problem, and then we as Siemens say, hey, here's the solution. It's not that simple. If it's an RFQ, like request for quotation in the normal business, the customer usually know what they want. They specify the requirements, and then you bid for it, competition bids for it. That's a traditional business, but here it doesn't work like this because the customer usually has a problem, but does not know the solution to specify. So we have to sit together. So what do? We look at the technologies. That's the radar screen on the left. I've showed this earlier with the three categories. And then we look at the site specifics from the customers. So just as an example, in a project we had with the customer recently is they have a site they have a power demand at site. It's an industrial application in an island mode. There's no grid connection, or it's their own grid if you want. And they say, okay, this is my power demand. This is my electricity demand. This is my operations that I run here. It's business critical. These are site conditions. So we looked at what is solar irradiation, what are the wind speeds, what assets does the customer have at site that we can still use or repurpose. Yeah, there are also assets you can repurpose, existing turbines, even if they don't produce electricity in the future anymore. You can help them, or you can use them for grid stabilization. So you repurpose them. So we take all these site specifics into account. Could also be future demand growth. Yeah, I mean, you want to not design a system that suits today and tomorrow, but you want to make sure that it's also sustainable in the long run to fulfill all requirements. We look at the costs. Is there a budget from the customer? Is there a current electricity tariff? What are the current fuel costs? I mean, all these things we take into account. And of course, if there are some emission reduction targets, for example, the customer can say, hey, I want this operation to be 60%. I want to have a 60% reduction in CO2 emissions in 5 years, and in, I don't know, 10 years or 15 years, I want to be at 100% carbon free. So all these boundary conditions we take into account. Then we have experts in the headquarters who run the numbers, and we look at certain technologies. So we look at your gas turbine, we look at PV, wind, heat pumps. I mean, name it. Yeah, it's a toolbox of technologies. There's lots of choices, lots of combinations and permutations, and then we come up with an optimized solution. So it's an optimization problem with the given boundary conditions the customer named us. And as you can imagine, this is a joint exercise with the customer and Siemens Energy. So usually we are in close contact to design these solutions. And how can it look like in the end? What I want to show you here is different pathways. Yeah. So for example, here we had a utility customer who runs on coal today. And the target scenario here on the right-hand side was always 100% green and clean. I mean, it's the objective of deep decarbonization, to be 100% CO2 free. So now look at the first two scenarios here at the top. So the customer could make a big step at the beginning and say, I switch my fuel from coal to gas and build a more efficient power plant. I can already drop 70%. Then in the midterm, I make sure my gas turbine can burn hydrogen. Then you drop another 80%. And then in the future, you run your gas turbine on 100% hydrogen. Then you have no more carbon emissions. So you make a big step at the beginning and then two little steps in the future. You could also go the other way and say, thermal storage or battery storage or whatever is a solution. In this case, it's thermal storage. It's a small impact, 20%. I mean, small compared to 70 in the other case. So you have a small step at the beginning, and then you say, okay, I want to also go into the heat pump business. I will add a heat pump to use excess electricity from renewables in combination with the thermal storage. And then in the future, by adding more storage, you can go into 100% carbon-free energy supply. So as you can see here, the path is totally different in terms of emissions and technologies applied. And that's why it's important that we sit with the customer to say, there are different pathways, there are different scenarios. You can make a big investment today, but you can also make a small one today and a bigger investment in the future and reach your carbon emission targets. And of course, this all depends on your regulation. If your government and your regulations are supportive for certain technologies, be it with a feed-in tariff, be it with giving CHP applications right of way for dispatch. I mean, there are many things. I'm not going into these details now. I just want to let you know there are so many different pathways that the customers usually cannot specify exactly in how they want to reach their deep decarbonization targets, because you should sit together with the technology provider to make sure we cover all angles. So this is how we do it. I mean, I elaborated on this one. It's the joint exercise with the customer. And now I can show you some references. I think I still have a bit of time for references because I don't want to leave you with theory, let's put it this way. And I pick a few which I hope are interesting for you. I mean, when we have the Q&A, you can also ask some questions. Feel free, that's no problem. So this example here is a really nice one. It's one of the biggest petrochemical companies in South America. It's Braskem from Brazil. And here the customer had at site in his petrochemical facility, residual gas, with high share of hydrogen. So because of the chemical process, they had hydrogen available at site, and often it's just maybe flared, because they don't have use for it. And they were thinking to modernize their plant. So what we did, we sit together and we were thinking, how can we use this gas they have on site to reduce their natural gas consumption, to reduce their fuel bill, if you want. So we deployed one of our technologies that can burn a high share of hydrogen. We designed this together with the customer, and here it's not only about the technology. Very interesting here, it's a build, own, operate, transfer project. So we run the power plant for the customer. They subscribe to electricity and steam, if you want. And we run the power plant for them, so they don't have to bother with it, and can make maximum use of their existing assets at site. And as I mentioned, the hydrogen-rich gas they have at site to reduce their electricity bill. So it's like catch-22, reduction of OPEX and the electricity bill, and reduction of emissions because we burn hydrogen. So that's a very, very nice example. Another example here is from Vietnam. I mentioned the second category earlier, fuel shift. Here we had a customer who ran a steam plant on oil, pretty old units on oil. So what we did, we found a solution with the customer that they can use the existing steam turbines. So existing assets are still there. And we designed the right power plant around it. So we supply gas turbines to the customer that will run on natural gas. So it's basically an LNG based plant. And the good thing here is the customer increased power output, almost doubling the power output, which is great because it's a growing economy. You switch from oil to gas. Here we also talk about clean air if you want, I mean, to reduce emissions, and also other particles that come with coal and oil instead of gas. So you have a specific emission reduction of 50%. And although you add power plants, and in a growing economy, almost doubling the output by dropping the specific emissions by 50%, you end up with the same emissions, but you have double the output, double the electricity, which is great. I mean, this is exactly the things that we like to do. And this is a low-hanging fruit. It's existing technology. It's nothing too fancy about it. It's not easy to do, but it's existing technology. That's the one I mentioned earlier from Dominican Republic. So I skipped that. It's a floating power plant where we switched from also oil to gas. And here it's this one is also, I mean, it's maybe sounds for you, why is it decarbonization? But I want to highlight it. It's could be Thailand as well. This example, we have lots of these turbines in Thailand as well, SGT 800s in combined heat and power. I want to highlight this because here we have a customer who needs steam. They also need heat for the industrial processes. And in case of China, you can also probably think of Indonesia, India, where you have a lot of coal. Also to switch from coal to gas and then use the exhaust heat for the industrial process. So that's again the low-hanging fruit. No regret move to rely on a clean or as clean as possible fossil fuel in a highly efficient manner to run your industry, your country, your businesses. And then of course you add renewables be it rooftop, be it grid scale, wherever it makes sense. So there's no harm doing that. So I will skip this one, and this one is interesting because it's Africa, and again, here it could also apply for certain places in Southeast Asia. I think for Thailand, it's pretty developed in the sense of gas supply, but there are other countries who run a lot of their power plants on oil or heavy fuel oil, even, or diesel. Here it was similar, a customer in Africa. And here we work together with a fuel supplier. So we can see partnering is very important for decarbonization. We found a partner who can supply our customer with LPG. Yeah, so and because gas was a problem, and but the idea was to get rid of the heavy fuel oil, or of a reciprocating engine power plant running on fuel oil. So we partnered to get LPG for our customer. We help them. We supply our technology, our SGT-800, and again, here you drop the emissions a lot by using proven technology, partnering or working together with your customer, finding a solution and bringing a fuel supplier in. So that's a great solution. And here we talk about really making electricity accessible and reliable for these people, which I think is very important. And there are many people, millions of people in the world who do not have electricity yet. And of course, we try to help them to get as clean as possible electricity supply. I will skip the heat pumps for now. I mean, you have them in the slide deck. I would like to mention a customer in Germany, and this is very interesting case, as this is an industrial customer. It's BASF, and here we supplied a battery. Yeah, now we talk about hybrids, what I mentioned earlier. You take a gas turbine, you take a battery, and here the beauty is the customer can, because it's an industrial plant, very important, if there's a blackout from the grid or the supply doesn't come, or even the site has a blackout, the industrial site, they can restart on their own. Yeah, they don't even need diesel gensets anymore, because diesel gensets also emit power, even though not much if it's just for black start capability. So here they can use the battery to start the turbine at any time if there's a blackout. But what you can also do with the turbine is, in the end, you can provide grid services. You can provide grid stability. You can do energy arbitrage. So you can charge the battery when there's lots of renewables, and you discharge when there's little renewables. So you can open up new revenue streams by adding this battery to your gas turbine, for example. And another benefit is your gas turbine runs more smoothly. Yeah, it doesn't ramp up and down every time. There's a bit of fluctuation in the demand or in the supply of the grid. So this is done by the battery, and by this you can increase the lifetime of your existing assets. So here again, a very beautiful example of using existing proven technology and new technology to reach, in this case, a more reliable grid for the customer, but also by having a battery, you can still reduce your CO2 emissions. So these are great examples of traditional technologies. And what I would show you, or one or two examples on hydrogen, if okay, if we have the time. Otherwise, stop me. That's also okay. As I mentioned earlier, we are in the hydrogen business. We are also active there with our Silyzer. It's an electrolyzer technology. And here we have an example in Chile. It's called Haro Oni. It's a project we do with a partner, and Porsche is one of the partners, the car maker. And here the idea is to use wind power in Chile. There's lots of wind, but in this region, in the southern region, not many people. And the idea is to take wind power, put it into an electrolyzer, generate hydrogen, generate e-fuel, methanol from it, and then to ship the methanol to off-taker. So it's a nice way how you can use energy, renewable energy resources from one spot in the world, in this case South America, and ship it over to another spot. In this case, I think Porsche wants is on it because the sports cars they want to run it also on a combustion engine in the future, I guess, but on emission-free fuels if you want, or green fuels. But it can also go to Asia, across the Pacific. So this is a great example how we also, this is really the forefront of the decarbonization efforts. It's a big project, first of its kind, where we are active, and an easier project is this one in Australia. That's the last one I want to share. Is in Adelaide. We have our electrolyzer in operation, so it can use grid or renewable electricity, generate carbon-free hydrogen, and then it puts this hydrogen into the grid, in the pipeline. This is possible to a certain degree, and then the end user, usually 5% is no issue in a gas grid, or even more. Then they have a natural gas hydrogen mix. So here also a great example. It's a very small one. It's 1.25 megawatts. It's a demonstrator plant, but here it's a first of its kind. It's a first step, and we are looking, of course, into more projects in the region for hydrogen production. Yeah. So this is the third category, deep decarbonization. With that, I would leave it, or I stop for now, and I'm happy to take questions if you want them. Thank you.